Back again, guys. Still part of the marathon session of videos that you've been watching, but I'm trying to knock a few of them out after, a rough couple days. So, anyways, checking in today with viewer questions and trying to answer them to the best of my ability. Welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, the channel all about distillation, whether it be home distilling, professional distilling, liking distilling, being interested in distilling, thinking about distilling, all those things. As always, reach out, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com, social media, and or the YouTube comments below, and check out thealchemistcabinet.com and our store where we offer my book, my DVDs, various distilling related ingredients when we have them, and all that fun stuff, as well as consultations. I don't know if you guys know that, but I do consultations from time to time. So I got time for one last question here this evening, and then I'm gonna have to do a whole nother set of these videos tomorrow because I got way behind on stuff. But this one's from Gordon Reed. So thank you for your experiential wisdom. That's a cool word, experiential. Justin Whaley, if you're watching this, put the word experiential down in that list of words that you are creating that you want to use when you have a chance when someone is talking to you, because that is a good one. I know most of you won't get that, but my still hand Justin Whaley certainly will. So thank you for your experiential wisdom. Why do you barrel at 110 instead of 120? So I presume that either at some point in time I said 110, or he's seen some of the Spirits of French Lick stuff or whatever. So I actually barrel at Spirits of French Lick at 105 proof. There's historical reasons for that, and there's qualitative reasons for that. So first and foremost, at Spirits of French Lick, we do not use any small barrels. We don't use any barrel, well, I'm not gonna say we don't use any barrel alternatives, because sometimes we do. We play around with Amburana chips, and we played around with some French oak and stuff like that in the past too. But historically, bourbon was almost always, and rye as well, was almost always barreled at a lower proof, because back in the day, back before Prohibition and back in the 1800s, going back to the 1880s, bottles were very hard to come by, and so you didn't sell your whiskey by the bottle, you sold it by the barrel. Distilleries would have had a range of different sizes of barrels that they sent out to different accounts depending on the size of the account and what that account might want, whether it's a store or a hotel or a restaurant, etc. But they wanted the proof of the whiskey in that barrel to be as close to 100 proof when that whiskey got matured and got shipped out to market as possible, because 100 proof was seen as a sign of quality at that time, and a very drinkable spirit at 100 proof, right, as opposed to being very hot, etc. What they may or may not have known, I'm sure that they would have noticed it, maybe they would not have known the reasons for it, is that the whiskey took on some very interesting positive quality, trying to think of what I'm looking for, some very positive qualities when it was barreled at a much lower proof. So the legal maximum for bourbon whiskey is to be barreled at 125, which is something that people do quite often now at the big distilleries, and they do it because it saves them room on barrels. Warehouses are expensive, and it saves them on the number of barrels, because barrels are very expensive and getting more expensive and more rare nowadays. It's getting hard for us craft distillers to get a hold of good barrels that meet the qualitative expectations that we would like. Nonetheless, so qualitatively, the reason that we go in, and we go in at 105, not 110, the reason we go in with our bourbons and our ryes, we don't do this with brandies. The reason that we don't do this with brandy is because we want brandy to go in at still proof, because we want it to maintain as much of that raw aroma and flavor and power of the raw materials what we possibly can. The bourbons, on the other hand, we want those to micro-oxidize. So first reason that we go in at 105, we drop the proof, and what happens is now the alcohol is less stable. It doesn't age faster. It ages differently because it gets more micro-oxidization, because it's not as stable as it would be at a higher proof. The second reason for going in a lower proof is that water is actually a better solvent on wood than ethanol is. So you're actually getting more extraction at a lower proof than you would at a higher proof, which is kind of cool. So we play that into the way that we handle everything at Spirits of French Lick. So we use 53 gallon and larger, at least 18 to 24 month air seasoned oak barrels where we can get them. These are medium plus toast heads. We don't use a heavy 3 or 4 char because we're able to make good cuts on the pot still between our heads and our hearts and our tails. We don't need that heavy filter, and the charcoal is not actually what's giving you a lot of the flavor anyways. It's actually those wood sugars from the toast underneath the charcoal as well as on the heads. So since we go with a number 2 char, what we actually get is we get a little more lignin that's left behind. And because of that, we're actually able to break that down in a very different way, which gives kind of toasted coconut, toasted hazelnut, Sometimes a very herbal eucalyptus sort of characteristic to our whiskeys, to our bourbons and our rye. So the 105 entry proof works very well for us. And depending on which warehouse we go in, we have one warehouse that's very much like a brandy cellar or a chai cellar, where we don't have real high temperatures or real low. It's connected to the main building, so temperatures fluctuate 20-30 degrees throughout the year. Very high humidity, very high angel share or evaporation at about 7% a year. The other two warehouses are much more like Scottish style dunnages, but they do have concrete floors. However cold it gets in the winter, that's how cold it'll be in there. However hot it gets in the summer, add 10 degrees to it. So depending on which warehouse we come out of, and that depends on what product it is, what warehouse it goes to, you might see our proof range from, originally the entry proof was 105. We come out of the chai cellar, I've seen them go all the way up to 114 proof in 4 years. If we come out of the more dunnage style or barrel barn buildings, we drop proof in there. So we might drop from 105 to, we've seen 97, 98 proof after 5 years, which is kind of cool. Every once in a while I get lucky, I pull a single barrel and it'll be like right on the dot at 100 proof. So I don't have to do anything to it. It falls in the bottled and bond, and that's really cool. I hope that explains why we do that. Again, it's a qualitative thing for us. We feel that it makes a softer, more interesting, more rounded spirit that matches the pot still style much more so than going in at a higher proof, where we wouldn't get that micro oxidization over time, nor as much of that barrel extraction, especially for us using an alternative style barrel, getting those alternative elements out of the barrel, right? I don't need a lot of caramel, I don't need a lot of vanilla. If I need those things, I've got roasted brewer's malts. I'll throw a roasted brewer's malt in there and pull the flavor I need for that part of it out of the brewer's malt, and then I'll focus on that proofing and that alternative barrel to give me those other aspects of the whiskey that I'm trying to make. So as always, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this video useful. I hope it gave you some information you might be able to put into practice, and love you. Have a great one.